Hey guys, this is Dawood from AutoMarketplace. Thanks for joining us. So today we're going to get right into it. There's actually a pretty big, these don't happen that often, an in-person commission board meeting. And so we'll get right into it. A few things are happening. It's actually quite important. If you haven't followed us, basically what we do is we kind of draft up an article and then we'll embed the video you're watching right now into the article. And so, although this article seems long, it has a lot of substance and it's important to understand what's going on. So let's get right into it. So TLC proposes strict Uber TV rules, flex fare set to officially make Uber big player in NYC taxi industry. TLC is holding an in-person hearing this Wednesday, the 14th, discuss at 10 a.m. to discuss proposed rules related to interior advertising in non-taxi NYC for hire vehicles. TLC will also vote on taxi flex fare regulations. So so here are the bullet points. New York City Council passed bill in December 2023 to allow for in-vehicle advertising tablets, despite the TLC being against it because of their experience with the infamous taxi TVs and yellow cabs. The TLC is holding a public hearing this Wednesday, August 14th at 10 a.m. to discuss launching new in-vehicle ad tablet rules and licensing regime. So although the City Council made it legal for there to be in-vehicle ad tablets, the TLC has to make a licensing regime and rules. So that's what's going to be discussed this Wednesday. One of the things that are going to be discussed. NYC TLC drivers, these are some highlights of the rules. NYC TLC drivers must earn at least 25% of gross ad revenue generated from an ad tablet. They cannot be forced to use tablet and must be paid on a weekly basis. Those are just some high level things. Leasing companies Uber and or Lyft, at least not their ad division, will not be allowed to make any recurring revenue from ad tablets, and only one ad tablet is allowed in a vehicle. So you can't have two ad tablets. You're only going to be able to have one. T-Mobile's Octopus Interactive, a very well-known name in that kind of ad tablet space, believes proposed rules are unnecessarily prohibitive and has asked NYC TLC drivers to sign a letter it has drafted. Last bullet point, TLC will also vote on taxi flex fare regulations during commission meeting, officially allowing yellow cabs to offer upfront pricing versus the taximeter. So taximeter will still be active in the yellow cab, the classic taximeter, but now officially yellow cabs and green taxis, the few that remain, can offer upfront fares officially. So a lot going on during this meeting. We encourage, if you can, attend the meeting. And so here are the details of the meeting. So as we just went over, TLC will hold an in-person meeting Wednesday, August 14th at 10 a.m. Their Manhattan office, downtown, 33 Beaver Street, 19th floor. If you can't attend in person, you can also attend virtually, as is usually the case, by going to the TLC website at 10 a.m. And by the way, all the links and everything we talk about will be in the description of this video, so you don't have to worry about that. So you can watch that at 10 a.m. on Wednesday. So if you want to speak at the TLC hearing on Wednesday, August 14th, this upcoming at 10 a.m., you have to basically email the TLC, call them by 5. This is important, by 5 p.m. on Tuesday. So let's say you all of a sudden have an epiphany that you want to speak, on the day of. It'll be too late probably. So it says speakers will not be able to sign up to testify the day of the hearing. Those who do not sign up in advance to testify are welcome to view the live stream of the hearing, and it's not going to be a question answer. So that's always the case. Basically, it's like a testimony. Every once in a while, a TLC board member or the chair will respond to the testimony, but it's not a Q&A session. Usually they give you a 3-minute hard stop. You can also submit comments to the TLC on its website by email, by mail, and or by fax. Please open the PDFs below for more information, including instructions on how to participate in the hearing if you need assistance. Example, if you have a disability. So you can click on these PDFs in our newsletter, and we'll provide the links. But this is the meeting agenda. We'll get back to that. Confirmation of the hearing. And so basically, The meeting will convene at 10 a.m., chair's report, all of this stuff. And so getting back to here, so meeting agenda. There are 4 main parts to the meeting. 1, approving new base applications. This always kind of happens. It's kind of more a ticking the. I've never seen a controversial situation with this. Report on enforcement by the Deputy Commissioner of Uniform Services Bureau, which appears to be a person named Raymond Scanlon. He'll present, so that'll be interesting. I'm not sure what the background to that is. Commission vote on proposed flex fare rules. So that's a vote. There was a hearing, and we'll get into that in May. But that's just a TLC board vote. So the 8 or 9 commissioners in attendance, including the chair, will basically approve the flex fare rules that were already discussed in May. And then finally, a public hearing on proposed rules related to interior advertising. So that's not a vote. There's rules are being proposed about interior advertising, in-vehicle advertising. So as we said, I'm providing a video summary of this article. I'll speak to it. And so let's start out with the proposed in-vehicle advertising rules. So the PDF, which we also attach below, can also be found. That's how it looks. Basically, it's this PDF. It sets out everything. Obviously, the whole point of our platform is to try to simplify things. I don't know how many people have time to go through a PDF that's that dense. So proposed in-vehicle advertising rules. The city council passed a bill late last year, and with some additional amendments earlier this year. I think there's a $500 licensing fee and some other things put in, including how much a driver would make from an ad tablet, that would allow NYC TLC licensed drivers and fleets to be able to display electronic advertising tablets in their for-hire vehicles. The bill was sponsored by NYC Council member Amanda Farias and supported by the City Council's Committee on Transportation and Infrastructure. It passed the full City Council vote unanimously in December 2023 and now has officially become law, despite the TLC was actually against this criticism and testimony on allowing in-vehicle ads. So this is what Council member Farias, who's quite a high-ranking council member, was quoted as saying at that time. Some of you may be asking, why did I introduce this bill? Why does the city council decide if our drivers get to have in-car advertising or not? The New York City Taxi and Limousine Commission regulates interior and exterior vehicle advertising. Over the last 5 years, drivers have been subject to the slow bureaucratic process. What makes today so important, that's when the bill was passed, is that drivers, I believe that was December 2023, is that drivers will no longer be subject to TLC policy changes, and their opportunity for advertising will be cemented into law for years to come. So the ads are allowed, but the TLC still is setting the rules. So TLC, Farias's point, council member Farias's point, is that we have basically forced the TLC to say you can't ban in-vehicle ads, but they're still regulating how it's going to play out. They're regulating how in-vehicle ads can look or what the licensing regime is. That the TLC still has control of. So TLC's 30-plus page PDF, which we just showed you, the TLC published its initial proposed rules related to in-vehicle advertising in a 37-page PDF, see below, which is a fairly dense document that is not easy to read. We understand the rulemaking process is complex and requires certain procedures and protocols to be followed, but a simple summary of proposals that the average, quote unquote average, whatever that means, NYC driver could understand would have been nice. Meaning like someone who's like not super technical or like doesn't have a background in like reading legal documents and things like that. TLC's bullet point summary goes over the goals of the rules rather than the specific proposals. And so if you see this, so this is the 37 PDF, page PDF. This is their bullet point summary. It's a formal procedure for licensing and supervision of businesses that provide a framework to access and assess the gross revenue, rules and penalties to monitor, technical requirements for approved tablets. So it's laying out the goals and what the rules are going to talk about, but actually doesn't get into specifics. So below, We've done our best to flag what we believe are the significant, not all TLC rule proposals related to in-vehicle advertising. Please let us know. Perhaps you read that 37-page PDF as well if you think we missed any. So we're just trying to make this simple for people, because I think that's the whole point, in a way, sometimes, of why a platform like AutoMarketplace is so helpful, is that we try to simplify things for drivers, for fleets, for industry participants who might not have the time or the capability to dissect what the rules are saying. So this is our reading of the rules, and we reference the PDFs. So one key thing is 25% of gross ad revenue goes to driver and weekly payments. So, and these are the reference numbers. The TLC licensed interior advertising provider. So if someone gets that license, and there's all sorts of rules related to the qualifications for that license. The TLC license interior ad provider must at minimum pay a driver using their tablet 25% of gross revenue, and no less than a week than on a and oh, I'm sorry, and on no less than a weekly basis. So that's very important. That's good to know. Another key point was no retaliation against the drivers. The TLC basically says a driver can't be punished if they choose to work or not to work with a tablet provider. Example, choosing Lyft or Octopus versus Uber sponsor tablets. So Uber just can't deactivate you because you use the Lyft tablet or the Octopus tablet, and vice versa. This is kind of an interesting one. Only one ad tablet in a vehicle. So usually when you see these vehicles, I mean, not all the time, it's usually on both the headrests of the backseat. So it says only one ad tablet in a vehicle. A for-hire vehicle may be equipped with one approved electronic tablet mounted in a fixed position. So maybe some drivers will put that in the middle, or there'll be some device that between the two seats that makes it centered, or maybe they'll just do it behind one headrest. The fourth one's going to upset, I know, upset a lot of leasing companies, which are, interestingly enough, and we'll discuss this very shortly at that Amanda Farias's announcement. So it says a leasing company, Base, Uber, Lyft can't make money on ads. So Uber and Lyft, the not their ad divisions, I think, but the dispatching divisions, the rides division of those companies. Excuse me. A leasing company, Base, Uber, and or Lyft cannot share in any revenue generated from an interior ad tablet. So as an example, so we say PDF page 4 and 5. I mean, it says, here's the rule. So a lessor cannot charge, request, or accept any fee for revenue generated from an interior advertising system. A base cannot charge, request, or accept any fee for revenue generated from an interior advertising system. A high volume service, so that's Uber, Lyft, cannot charge, request, or accept any fee or revenue generated from an interior advertising system to or from a driver. So that's an example of, we're trying to distill that more simply, but that's where it says that. Okay, a couple more key bullet points. Only TLC licensed ad tablets can be used, and authorized ads can be displayed. That's not that controversial. That makes sense. So only an ad tablet licensed by the TLC can be used, and only TLC approved ads can be displayed. This is kind of interesting. 15% of content must be TLC provided. So 15% of ad tablet content will be TLC provided content. So just as an example of what we're referring to there. So if we go to page 33, here's the at least 15% of passengers facing device count will be comprised of TLC provided content. The TLC required prologue will not be counted against the 15% requirement. Okay. This one is also kind of interesting. Passenger can't make payment. A lot of people are hoping having the tablet would encourage tipping, easy tipping. So it says passenger can't make payment or browse internet via ad tablet, and tablet must have easy controls. That's fair enough. So passenger payment cannot be processed through interior ad tablet. Tablet should have no internet browsing capability, and passengers should have the easy. This is less controversial. Should have the ability to easily mute, control, or turn off the ad tablet. So before you get into T-Mobile's Octopus not happy, as you probably can tell based on all those rules, uh, they probably want it. We're hoping for something a little more less restrictive. So if we go back to December when this passed, we're not going to overview the whole thing. Again, all the links will be provided. So this is December. And so this was in council. And with the leasing company not being able to make money, we just want to mention this. So a representative from Voyager Global Mobility, which basically owns very kind of there's these big four leasing companies, but basically they're big three. And obviously, if a leasing company is renting to a driver, this could have been a big ad generator. Honestly, it would have been an ad generator for Uber and Lyft as well. So it's interesting when Amanda Farias and also the Lyft representative was there as well. He had said on behalf of Voyager, which owns Buggy and Fast Track, with our two New York flagship brands, Buggy and Fast Track, we're the largest TLC rental provider in the city. Rental, not predatory lease. That refers to other remarks. We won't get into that right now. On behalf of our past customers, our current 43 customers, our future customers, we want to say thank you for the listening. This puts more money in drivers' pockets. So it's going to put more money in drivers' pockets, but I mean, you could kind of quietly embed, like increase the leasing rate by 10 or $15 without actually breaking down that the driver earnings are up because of the ad revenue. So there's still a bit of a thing, but you can't, like, the relationship, the ad tablet relationship is not existing with Buggy and Fast Track or the leasing company or with Lyft and Uber. So we just wanted to make that point because I know a lot of our listeners, as many of you know, we run a small leasing company. I mean, much smaller than Buggy and Fast Track, but I think a lot of people might be surprised that not only TLC leasing companies can't make money, but bases can't make money, and Uber and Lyft can't make money, at least not in their ad division. So it's notable. I think in this hearing, you're going to see some of those guys appear. And so Octopus is also not happy, which is the ad tablet provider. So if you know the recent history of in-vehicle ad tablets becoming legal in NYC, you'll know T-Mobile owned Octopus Interactive, a well-known tablet provider among NYC drivers, and the TLC were in a head-to-head battle last year. The TLC actually sent an industry-wide email distribution in October 2023, specifically naming the company as illegally operating in the city, which, to be fair, technically was at that time. Well, as you could have probably guessed from our bullet point summary above, and the 30-plus page PDF laying out TLC's proposed rules on interior advertising. Although in-FHV advertising tablets are now legal, the war is not over. Octopus sent the below email with hyperlink to a letter addressed to the TLC asking drivers to support the T-Mobile owned company's push to ask the proposed rules be amended, i.e. be less restrictive. So a little background to that, we covered this. So in an article we wrote on October 5th, we're not going to go over the whole article, but this was an actual on October 2nd. The TLC actually did an email, like a industry-wide email distribution. And in that, it says the TLC has not authorized the T-Mobile product Octopus Interactive. TLC will issue summonses pursuant, basically. And so, there was like this battle going on between Octopus, T-Mobile's Octopus, and then IDG also said the TLC actions were unhelpful. And then there's this whole thing. You can read this article if you're interested in that. And so, okay, back to this. So what is Octopus saying? So they sent this kind of screenshot. It says this on August 8th, a few days ago. So it says the New York City Taxi and Limousine Commission recently released draft regulations for in-car advertising, which we just went over, and will meet on August 14th to consider upcoming Wednesday, to consider proposed changes. The regulations as drafted impose significant restrictions on the in-car advertising industry and you as a driver. If they're not changed, your experience as an Octopus driver in New York City will be negatively impacted. Octopus will be submitting a letter on behalf of our NYC drivers. To add your name to this letter, please click either the pink button in the please click either pink, I guess there's another pink button in this email. So some drivers sent us this. We click the button, and this is what it opens up. And this is the letter. So below we paste basically once you click that button, this is what the letter says. Octopus will be submitting a letter to the TLC on behalf of our NYC drivers. To add your name to this letter, please respond signed to the text message you received. Letter. This is the Octopus's letter, to be clear. I'm a for-hire vehicle driver serving the 5 boroughs, and I'm writing to share my concerns about the new draft rules for interior advertising proposed by the TLC. When the City Council passed the legislation allowing us to make extra income through interior ads, I was thrilled. However, the current rules do not let us make the most of this opportunity. The extensive rules around licensing approved tablets and reporting will restrict competition in the interior advertising industry and limit the extra income I can make as an FHV driver. It is crucial to cut down on the red tape around implementing advertising programs for us. We need more freedom to choose and manage the tools we use for ads and to have better control over our vehicle systems. Less regulations means the existing companies in the industry can continue operating for the benefit of for-hire vehicle drivers and keep things running smoothly. Once again, this is an Octopus email that they want the drivers to send, but Octopus has drafted. The TLC has proposed rule changes that will make it significantly more difficult to operate the tablet, requiring drivers to manage log on, log off functions, requiring tablets to have physical printing functionality. She looked into that. It's not entirely true. I believe they also allow for an electronic distribution mechanism, but there is, unless I'm reading the rules wrong, but we won't bore you with the details. And requiring tablets to implement voice activated features are some of the examples of complicated requirements. Obviously, I'm wrong. If I'm wrong on them actually requiring physical printing, then that's annoying that many tablets can't physically print something. But I believe it's physical or electronic in the rules, but I could be wrong. As a for-hire vehicle driver, I appreciate the simplicity of existing interior advertising programs, and the proposed rules make tablet usage overly complex. Finally, the rules misunderstood how advertising revenue translates to driver compensation. The TLC rules only consider a traditional revenue share, whereas existing companies provide a more consistent payment structure that results in well more than 25% of gross ad revenue. The TLC rules use trip data as the basis in several items, as well as the term shift. To base our earnings off trip data or shift length requires the sharing of information between a high volume for hire service company, which is just Uber and Lyft, and the interior advertising provider. Additionally, only a high volume for hire service company could comply with content or consent requirements that must be shown at the start of a trip. So it sounds like Octopus is saying Uber and Lyft are getting an unfair advantage. In summary, because Uber and Lyft basically have tablet divisions, although their Rise division, like we just went over, can't make money. They actually have like I believe Lyft and Uber both have tablet divisions or advertising segments to their business. They're run separately. In summary, I encourage the NYC TLC to amend the draft rules to allow this important industry to operate more freely. Let's ensure the drivers can fully benefit from the technology designed to assist us. Octopus will be submitting a letter to the TLC on behalf of our NYC drivers. To add your name to this letter, please respond signed to the text message received. And so the next thing we'll discuss is FlexFare. So that's the in-vehicle advertising summary. And this is going to, so let's go over that. So we just went over what's going to be discussed on Wednesday, what the public hearing is about in terms of in-vehicle advertising. And so I think from our perspective, I think the TLC has made very sensible rules. Some of them are like, the 25% gross revenue. I think the idea to protect drivers against abusive leasing companies taking too much share is a very good idea this is going to be an unpopular opinion, but if Fast Track or Buggy own the vehicle and they're renting it, to completely prevent them from making any money in any way, shape, or form, feel like is a bit of a, I don't know if that's like, it seems like a slippery slope in terms of property rights there. But we also understand what it's trying to solve for. So I think you'll probably see Fast Track Mobility. I think as a driver, if I was approaching this, I think what's good about the proposed rule, so the 25% gross the cut of the gross revenue, I think, is a positive, like at minimum, a driver. So I think that's a very good thing. I think the weekly payments is a good thing. However, I think what is bad, I should say, is that if you make too many rules and make it so cumbersome for any ad tablet provider to like basically like kind of pitch you as a driver, or less as a fleet, I guess, just as a driver that install our tablet. If there's so many rules, like basically 3 or 4 companies are going to be able to comply with them. So then you only have 3 or 4 options. I'm sure there's a lot of startup companies that would be much more competitive, and you could, if what I'm saying is making sense, like if there should be rules, but if it's too many rules and it's too cumbersome or like too restrictive, then there's going to be less competition, and then drivers are going to have less choices. So um again, I think there's a lot to consider, but I think it's very important that I think this is actually a pretty big deal. In-vehicle advertising can make money for drivers, especially if drivers choose to put it in their car. And so the other good thing about the TLC rules is that no one can take like action. So if like you would decide not to install Uber's ad tablet or Lyft's ad tablet, they can't take action against you. So good and bad about the ad rules. And so, oh, sorry. So we're going to get into FlexFare, but if just in case you want the full background before we start talking about FlexFares, we did a lot of articles on this. We'll provide the links in October, the council hearing, the latest one. I think the latest one is interesting because we get into a little bit of the background on like the taxi TV. So Wall Street Journal had this interesting article in April discussing that. And and so that is that. So the next part of the meeting, which is more of a vote, but so basically they're voting for this. So there's a public hearing was always held, but it's a very important vote, and it seems like it's going to pass. So the vote is about FlexFare. So as mentioned previously, although the public hearing about the proposed in-vehicle advertising rules will be the main event, the TLC Board of Commissioners will also vote on proposed FlexFare, yellow taxi, and green cab regulations. The FlexFare pilot program essentially allowed NYC taxis to offer upfront pricing on e-hail or app-hail trips. There was a 1.5-hour TLC public hearing on May 8th. And so then we also attached this, there's the FlexFare rules that are going to be basically voted on. It's not a public hearing. It's kind of a repeat of the May hearing with a notable exception, which we'll get into. So there was a 1.5-hour TLC public hearing on May 8th, mostly focused on, at the time, proposed FlexFare rules, and it was fairly contentious. The New York Taxi Workers Alliance, NYTWA, we recently had their leader, Bhairavi Desai, on, a prominent driver advocacy group, essentially argued that e-hail dispatchers should not pay a driver less than the same trip done by a traditional taximeter. So we had written about this. So if you want kind of more background to FlexFare, we have an article on May 5th. And so I think this article is more relevant to the background in terms of why that hearing was contentious. So May 9th. And so basically, what NYTWA is arguing, I'm just going, and then the TLC had a presentation. I'm just quickly going through this article. Basically, here it is. I'm sorry. So NYTWA was basically, they took these screenshots and said, look, the e-hail rate was $40, $41, and the meter rate would have been $70. So the driver's going to pay $30 less. E-hail trip meter rate, they're making this, and they're probably right on this, by the way, because obviously in a meter, they're not like Uber and Lyft are not having, the different take rates. We hear that point, and we mentioned it at the time, but I think we just kind of got like these few paragraphs and sentences out of that article. So at the time we wrote the following: the market for NYC street hails is decreasing as a percentage of total trips. This is not Uber's fault. Customers prefer using their smartphone to hail FHVs and prefer an upfront price. This does not mean street hails will go to zero, but it might plateau at 5 to 10% of NYC for hire trips, our guess. When driver advocates frame the pay from an e-hail trip as less than it would have been using a taximeter, it's not really intellectually honest. The trip is fundamentally originating from a third-party app. The trip otherwise would not have been a street hail. 90% plus of the time, let's say this is true. Yellow cabs are not forced to accept third-party e-hails, and the industry still has the exclusive ability to service street hails and create their own app and partner with other companies not subject to utilization rate and compete with Uber and Lyft. Honestly, and this is a bit of tough love for the taxi medallion industry. If Uber is originating a trip, then that is Uber's customer, and they need to be compensated in a way that makes sense. Now, if the yellow cab industry forces Uber to pay them X amount and Uber doesn't want to, guess what? They will send their customers to other NYC for hire vehicles. If the goal of the yellow cab industry is to force Uber to send them trips, we can't support that. We do support strictly enforced for hire vehicle supply caps to help protect driver wages, and we've discussed that at length. And so let's explain our point there. So the point we're making is, so we understand. So basically, what Knight was saying and what other yellow cab advocates are saying is that, hey, if Uber dispatches us a trip, and that's happening more often, and we'll get into the data below. They're saying that what the driver should get should be equivalent to if that trip was done by a taximeter. So we think that's intellectually dishonest because fundamentally the trip wouldn't have been subject to a taximeter because the trip is being originated via a smartphone. It's being e-hailed. And so then another layer to that is like, okay, let's say you accept that. Well, Uber should be doing the calculations such that the driver, after Uber's take rate and the Uber's take rate, let's make it simple, that the driver should be getting paid the same as they would net. The driver net should be the same as if they did a taximeter. That actually is going to basically kill e-hail demand for yellow cabs, because basically if Uber I'm probably not explaining it the best way, but if Uber has to, let's say you street hail a yellow cab and you go to JFK. That's an easy example. And the yellow cab driver net from that, because it's, they own a medallion or they're leasing a medallion, so there's no take rate. That street hail nets them, I don't know, $60-$70 after the surcharge and the taxes. I might be a little off there. So let's say, just to make it simple, let's say $70. Let's say Uber gives a yellow cab a airport e-hail, and the yellow cab accepts it, and the passenger pays $110, right? And let's say the taxi driver in that instance, after the sales tax, after their additional fees that a yellow cab street hail are not subject to, let's say that driver makes $50 instead of the $70 that they would have made on a street hail. Okay, so think about what we're saying. We think it's intellectually dishonest because fundamentally the Uber hail wouldn't have existed as a street hail. So then if Uber has to solve for paying the driver $70, they have to take less of a take rate. Now that could be good. We're not saying that's a bad thing, but to force Uber to do that, what's ultimately going to happen, it actually could negatively affect yellow cab drivers, because yellow cabs just need they need to take back market share right now. They need volume again. So I'm making the point from that angle, that how do you drive volume to the yellow cab industry? How do they regain the market share? If you force Uber to reduce their take rate, they're just going to dispatch the trip to their non-yellow cab driver. They're not additionally incentivized to dispatch to a yellow cab driver because it's more expensive for them. I hope I explained that. Leave a comment or if that doesn't make sense. But that's what basically Nitro was arguing, that if Uber or Lyft or any e-hail dispatches to a yellow cab, that they need to pay them what the taximeter otherwise would have paid that driver. But fundamentally, the hail is coming from an app. It's not coming from a street hail. That's our only point. We understand everybody wants to solve for greater driver pay, reducing Uber's take rate. Everybody's going to agree with that. But right now, the yellow cab industry needs trip volume. So that's going to impact that. So, um, so that was the point there. So, however, the TLC did listen to the public, at least somewhat listen to what Nitro was saying and other yellow cab driver advocates were saying. So, in the rules, in the notice of voting on the rules, um, for Wednesday, the TLC says, furthermore, based on written and oral comments, TLC is amending the proposal to ensure that the driver will be able to see any fees that the e-hail application provider may charge prior to accepting a trip, as well as a breakdown of itemized charges in electronic form after the trip is complete. So basically, this is actually an interesting topic. So we won't get super deep into this, but like Bill Ackman, a very famous investor, actually this like went super viral on Twitter/X, um, where Bill Ackman basically hailed in Uber and then got a yellow cab. This is becoming more popular in New York City, and so he spoke to the driver, and the driver basically said that he tipped the driver, I think. Or let me just read what Bill Ackman said. He said, "I took an Uber today and for the first time was offered a NYC yellow cab. I thought, good for Uber for supporting the cabbies. I asked the driver about his experience with Uber and he surprised me by saying it was bad. He explained that even when the passenger agreed to pay a tip to the driver on the Uber app, the driver did not receive a tip and Uber kept the tip for itself. I said that could not be true, so he asked me to test it. When the ride finished, I added a $5 trip. His screen showed that I paid no trip. The driver was right. In short, Uber is massively increasing its margins and profits in NYC by ripping off NYC cab drivers. I texted Dara Khosrowshahi, the CEO of Uber, midday today and sent this photo of the driver's screen. He did not respond. I like Dara, but this is really bad. I can only assume that Dara is unaware of this. Uber needs to immediately return stolen funds. And then he basically showed this. Okay. Ultimately, just to be very clear, no one was stealing tips. That wasn't the case. It says, "Hi, Bill. We're stepping in for Dara Khosrowshahi, who's on a business trip. We pass 100% of the tip off to Curb, our taxi partner, and they are required to pass on the tip to the driver." So this is actually going to relate to. So the tip isn't being stolen by Uber. We have to be fair to Uber. And so he also said, "Thanks for the clarification." That said, I paid the tip first, and when the driver's screen that I photographed appeared afterwards, the drivers definitely believe they're not being paid, and they have no ability to audit whether the passenger has paid a tip or not. This seems like an easy problem to fix. So, I mean, it's a good point, but like, I think the accusation that someone was stealing a tip wasn't correct. You have to be like clear about that when the accusation was made. But the point is a good point by Ackman that it's very confusing. So, but this actually leads us how we're going to conclude the video as it relates to flex fare rules being likely passed and why it's a big deal. So, with upfront pricing for yellow cabs and green taxis, the few that remain becoming official, it marks the beginning of a new era in the taxi medallion industry. Uber executive Josh Gold recently revealed to City and State, close to a well-known publication, close to 10% of yellow cab trips originated via the Uber app. Note, and this is to Ackman's point, technically Curb and Arro are dispatching the trip to the driver, but the trips are originating via the Uber consumer app. So in New York City, I mean, that sounds really confusing, but that's actually causing that's another way to explain the confusion. So if I've actually done this. So if I call an Uber X, some every once in a while or more often, like it's happening more often, Uber will prompt say, "Will a yellow cab? Do you want to take a yellow cab? A yellow cab is closer. The fare might be slightly cheaper." So oftentimes people will say yes. So a yellow cab comes. So although that trip is clearly originating from Uber, technically Curb and Arrow are dispatching the trips to the driver. So that's the reason why that tip thing is the confusion is happening with that. And there's also another very important point about this. As we've mentioned, yellow cab e-hails are not subject to utilization rules. This is a loophole that uniquely benefits Uber in our opinion and negatively impacts non-taxi medallion NYC for hire drivers with lockouts. And we've spoken about that, access restrictions, as they say, still impacting many NYC TLC licensed drivers who work for Uber. We expect this regulatory dynamic to come under more focus. And this is just Josh Gold, the Uber executive, said to City and State, Gold achieved the detente by positioning Uber as an ally in the taxi industry recovery. 10% of taxi rides are now referred to as Uber drivers, which is kind of like badly worded. I think what they meant is 10% of yellow cab driver trips originate from the Uber app and are dispatched via Curb and Arrow. I think that's what they meant to say there. Happy to be proven wrong, but I think that's what that meant. Okay. So we'll conclude the video with this. So what's the point we're trying to make? What we're saying is we understand the yellow cabs industry argument that we have to if someone street hails, we have to accept that street hail, and a lot of our trips are street hail. So if we have the Uber and Lyft app on when we're idle, we cannot be subject to the same like utilization rate and driver minimum pay rules that are causing driver lockouts to occur. So, but quite clearly, if they're not subject to those same rules, Uber will dispatch to a yellow cab driver over give them preference over an like a TLC driver who has like a for hire vehicle, a non yellow cab for hire vehicle. So just to make this very simple, let's say 2 years ago, Uber basically wasn't really dispatching the yellow cabs. Now, if Uber dispatches the yellow cabs, they're not subject to that UR requirement, that utilization rate requirement that's locking out drivers, which we've discussed at length. But if they dispatch to a yellow cab driver who accepts the fare, that's not being calculated in the UR formula. So it's a bit of a loophole. And so I think as more drivers contemplate this, I think they're going to start saying this is unfair. Now, the yellow cab argument, like I said, is that they have to accept street hail. So why should they be subject to a UR rule? I get that. But this is going to get more and more, I think, attention from the Uber and Lyft NYC driver community, this dynamic. So we'll wrap up the video here. So basically, tomorrow you have in-vehicle advertising being discussed, and then you have the flex fare rules basically being approved. So it's kind of like establishing this. Basically establishing officially that Uber can dispatch to yellow cabs in the manner they're doing it via the Uber app. So that's a really big deal, especially given that, according to Josh Gold, the Uber executive, that 10% of yellow cab trips are originating via the Uber app. That's numbers probably even go higher. That's good for the yellow cab industry as they need more volume to take back share. But obviously that's going to cause, some different dynamic. That's going to cause some some disagreements between yellow cab drivers and non-yellow cab drivers who are like app drivers, because those app drivers might view the yellow cab drivers as stealing their trips. But it's good for the yellow cab industry in many ways. So we'll leave it there. We hope this was helpful. Thanks for tuning in, and we do encourage you to sign up to speak at the hearing. So until next time.